Welcome, everybody. This is the Smart Connector podcast, and it's great to have you here. My name's Jane Bayler, and as ever, I have a very exciting guest for you today, Rachel Hernandez. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
So Rachel is Director of Marketing for Nextnet Media, which is the largest global network of trusted media outlets, link partners, and global news websites. And she's really passionate about brand storytelling, and so am I. So we're going to dive deep into this topic today, as it's something that I could talk about forever. So it's really great to have you here, Rachel. So before we get into it, tell us a little bit about what you do at Nextnet Media and what Nextnet Media actually does as well.
Sure. So Nextnet Media is a parent company to different marketing brands. The most well-known ones are probably our SEO agencies. So we own The Hoff, which is a SEO and digital marketing company. It's been around since 2010. Authority Builders is also one of our brands. So they're pretty well known in the industry. They were founded by Matt Diggity, who is an SEO go-to guru type guy. And then linkbuilder.io is also one of our brands, another SEO company, but they really specialize in large scale enterprise link building for some of the biggest brands and companies in the world. So yeah, I'm director of marketing and I get to do a lot of fun stuff. Essentially, I'm in charge of all of the content that we create. So I do our organic social. I do a lot of on-site content like blogs and resources. I run our webinar program. I do a lot of paid media. So a lot of stuff, but a lot of really fun and creative stuff too.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And we were just talking beforehand, weren't we, about the incredible opportunities that are out there today, really for creators and for people who they have a creative bent, obviously, like you and I, because with the advent of social media and being able to distribute content and actually have it valued and have it grow your business, really, it's never been a better time, has it, to be a creator?
No, it's so exciting. And it's just been really cool to get to see, we were saying before, when I was in university for writing. And at that time, this is the early 2000s, it was like maybe you'd be an author or you'd be a journalist. And now the possibilities are really endless. And it's just really cool.
Yeah, of course it is. So let's get right into it. So if you were to give somebody a tip about their content and about using storytelling to boost their brand and get more resonance really with the people that they're trying to influence, what would be your top tip for them?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that stories resonate so profoundly with people is that a lot of the time we can see ourselves in them or we can
Mm,
see aspects of our lives in them. And
definitely.
one of the things that I think marketers miss a lot is when they are creating a story that they're trying to use to connect a user to their brand, they make their own product or their service or their brand the hero of that story rather than creating content that allows the user to see themselves as the hero of their own story. So when you're talking about brand storytelling or creating marketing around your product or service, rather than talk about why your product or service is the hero and why it's so great, the trick really is to talk about how the user becomes the hero, that you are on their journey to success with them and the way that they can get there, maybe with a little bit of help from what you do.
Definitely. So I think that's such an important point because people are most interested in themselves, aren't they? We're all preoccupied with our own struggle, our own journey, our own aspirations. And so if people are not talking to those, then they're really they're going to lose us fairly quickly, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think when you're on the inside of a company or a product, it's very easy for us to see the connection between what we do and somebody's success. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that gap is bridged in the content you create when you're just talking about what you provide. You really have to set it up so there's a clear pathway to we work with this or we use this and we get to where we want or need to be.
Yeah. And would you say that some story structures work better than others?
Yeah, I think it really depends on like what the medium we're talking about. There are a lot of things I think that go into that. But as a general rule, and I work in an industry where there is a lot of jargon, and even those who know the ins and out of SEO, like your eyes can just glaze over if somebody's talking about it too much. So I'm always a fan of simplicity. I think that is just key when it comes to creating content that's going to connect to a user. So whether it is a social media post or you are doing a short form video or a long form, it can be easy to fall into the trap of wanting to use big words or impress somebody, or maybe you got it kicked into you at school that you needed to use therefore or whatever. But the simpler the better. Always get to the point right away and use very simple, specific language that's not going to alienate anybody that they can most easily connect with.
Yeah, and I think particularly for people like you and I, because one of the things that we were talking about beforehand is that both of us studied English. We studied literature, and I also studied drama. And so we've obviously, in doing that, we've studied some of the great writers, and you get a command of language that is probably in advance to a lot of other people. But we have to recognize that not everybody is like us, right? And so you can't go wrong if you do keep it simple, because most people have a simple grasp of language. Some people have a more sophisticated grasp, but if you want to reach most people or everybody within your target audience, then I totally agree with you. The simpler, the better, right?
Oh, yeah. And I love great works of literature. I will sit down and watch a period drama, but that's not necessarily content that I want to always be engaging in. I want to choose the time when I am sitting down to read some Shakespeare, because that takes more energy than something that is just easily absorbed. And I only have so much energy in the day. So don't come at me all the time with something that is going to make me work harder than I have to understand it.
Very good point. So basically, give it to people on a plate, make it simple for them to understand and relaxing and enjoyable, as opposed to making them work hard to understand what you're trying to say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's fantastic. So, Rachel, if you're creating a story, or if you're advising one of your clients on putting together a story, and they say, I don't know, how do I start? Where do I start? What would you say?
I would say there are a few different ways to go about it, and I always like to start with a foundational concept that like connects to the brand as a whole. And to get to that point, there are a few different things that we like to do. One is obviously understand your user base. And I know that is so much easier said than done, like especially depending on the industry that you're in. Sure, if you're selling something that is like obviously very targeted, maybe you're doing some sort of like skincare or I don't know, beauty or something, yeah, then maybe you have a pretty clear understanding of your demographics. My industry isn't like that at all. We work with businesses that have a few employees to like huge enterprise companies, all ages, all over the world. So it's always harder to pin down.
Mm.
When that's the case, though, I always say look to your competitors and see what they're doing that resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you. So
Mm.
we'll go and take a look at what other SEO agencies are doing with their marketing. And we'll say, okay, what hits for us and what doesn't? And we from there like start to build a foundation. We don't copy either. That's the other thing is you want to be original. You want to be authentic, because people are smart and they'll call you out immediately if they see that you're trying to do exactly what somebody else is doing. So for the Hoff, for instance, like our sort of touchstones are simplicity, because SEO and growing a business and all of this stuff is very complicated. We want to make it simple. We want to simplify your life by taking
Mm.
this thing off of your hands. And
Yeah.
success, because simplicity and success, because success is really the ultimate goal for what we give our clients. We want them to look at any piece of marketing that we create and say, oh, okay, they I'm going to be successful. They can help, I can be successful. So those like foundational touch points, I think, are really important.
I like that. So basically, what you're saying is that we can use storytelling to inspire people to believe that they are going to be successful, because essentially we're showing them how. We're taking them by the hand and we're saying, here is the method, and we're dressing it up as entertainment so that they understand, okay, it's a bit like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, right? She's being taken on a journey. And so we take our clients on a journey that are really the steps to success, aren't they?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And is there any trap that people commonly fall into that you think that they should avoid?
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, there are so many. When it comes I think one that I'd be remiss not to talk about, because it's just so prevalent and it's going to be prevalent and just change, like life changing for a while, is I see so much AI generated content that's very obviously AI generated content, whether I'm scrolling through LinkedIn and every post is looking the same, or I am reading a blog post, and I see that there's just like a very still uncanny valley element to it, that I think it's very easy for people to, and I'm not saying don't use AI. I use AI all the time, but that's not the finish line. This is the jumping off point. And when you are doing marketing, especially when we're talking about stories that resonate with your users, there has to be an element of humanity and authenticity to it, or else you're going to lose them immediately. And that's something that I think we'll see how it plays out. I think it's very tempting for businesses. And I can relate, if you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a large team of writers, you don't have, and there's this free tool that says it can do it all for you. Why, of course, it's super, super tempting to just hop on and try and get it to do that work. But at the end of the day, when all of the content looks the same that we're engaging with, the secret and the way to stay competitive is going to be that authenticity, that humanity, that rising above all that. Yeah.
Do you know, I totally agree with that. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I personally am wondering whether it's only me that can spot a ChatGPT social media post from a mile off. But I really can. And also when people message me on social media, I can spot a ChatGPT message. And I know that obviously you've got grades, right? In the US, we don't have grades in sort of children's school over here in the same way. But it is like somebody who is maybe 11 or 12 is being taught how to write for social media, say, for the first time. And so it sounds clumsy. And I want to call it out because I'm seeing a lot of people doing it. And I think they don't realize, they look at it and maybe to their untrained eye, they think, well, this looks absolutely fantastic. All I had to do was say, write me a social media post on topic X. And then, phew, job done. You know, that would have taken me half an hour and now it's only taken me 2 minutes. And there it is. And it doesn't really cut through in the same way. I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think it's good maybe to get some structure and maybe get a head start and get some fresh ideas and so on. But I don't think there's any substitute for our authentic voice. I agree with you.
No, it is an incredible tool. Don't get me wrong. And if anybody listening or watching right now is a content creator or a writer and knows what that process is like, having that sort of like foundational outline or that first draft, I've always said that writing is really editing. Writing's really rewriting. That's where the magic truly happens.
Yeah.
So if you do have a tool that kind of gives you a few variations or a jumping off point, and then you can take it from there, and it saves you from that staring at the blank page part of your process, which, my goodness, fantastic. But that is, it's not writing. It's a writing tool, but don't let it do the writing for you. That's what you or your team is there for.
Yeah, exactly. To give it your unique style. I mean, I'm also a great fan actually of ChatGPT. It's helped me in so many ways. And sometimes I just literally sit there putting questions into it and getting answers. And it really is amazingly valuable. But we wouldn't have somebody talk as ourselves, would we? If we could implant a robot into ourselves in order to have conversations, the chances are it would have very dull and inspiring conversations. And it's the same thing, isn't it? Our voice is part of our humanity and the way that we express ourselves, and that is the uniqueness that at the moment, certainly and probably for the foreseeable future, that any AI cannot replicate.
No, it can't. And it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out too. I think there's just so much going on with things with copyrights and what does OpenAI have access to and what should and what it shouldn't and what can you use it for. There's already some question as to whether or not AI content is automatically not your own, because essentially it's content that's created from content that's been created, and you might not necessarily be the owner. Like, there's a lot to keep in mind there when we talk about using these tools that can have a very profound long-term impact on the things we create, even just from a logistical, lawful perspective.
That's very interesting. And it's something that I hadn't really thought about very much. But in terms of things like intellectual property, copyright, and so on, I can foresee that there could be some quite big lawsuits coming up at some point. So, yeah, good point. Okay, so in terms of the different types of stories, Rachel, could you give us an illustration maybe of 3 different types of stories that creators or businesses might want to adopt in order to build that loyalty and that interest and get the attention of the people that they're trying to reach?
Yeah, I love that. We talked about making your user, your client, the hero of your story. And I'm going to say that again because I just think it's so important. And that can show up in so many different ways. Like, we have even like social media campaigns where we say things like, we do this so you can do that. We do this small thing so that you can do this big thing. And even though that little campaign like resonates very well. And then that also can translate to things like if you have case studies or video testimonials, I think are a super powerful tool. I will say, if that is something like, because we'll get users to do video testimonials for us and integrate that into our marketing, mail them a ring light if they don't have one. Get them set up so that it doesn't look like a hostage video. Some of us know how to do this and we do this a lot, but we can take it for granted that our clients may not. So I think that's a big piece of it. I do think, though, like highlighting your values and your culture is also super, super important and resonates more than ever before. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to get very political or do anything like that, but things that like we will do at Nextnet Media, for instance, is we have a charity that we donate to every month that one of our team members gets to pick based on recognition from the rest of the team. And that's been a very cool way to get engagement on social media and to highlight our values, which include giving back. And we give a team member a write-up and they tell us why they chose a certain charity, and people respond really well to that. And I think the other thing would be your origin story. Everybody loves an origin story.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I wouldn't go ahead and make that your whole marketing, but going on shows like this one, for instance, is like a really great idea. Reflecting maybe on your anniversary of your company about how far you've come and doing a piece of social media or a blog post that can resonate with people too. And they can put themselves in that hero's shoes from hearing about your successes.
I know that with my clients, so I run a program called Ideal Client Success. So one of the things that I really do help my clients with a lot is their message to market. It's really so important. And I know that a lot of them get really stuck with this aspect of storytelling, because talking about your origin story, most of us have had so many different highs and lows in our life if we're actually going to be talking about ourselves as opposed to, let's say, if we're working for a bigger business and it's the bigger business's origin story, as it were. But if we're talking about our personal brand, that is where I find a lot of my clients get stuck, because they're like, well, I don't really know what to include and what to discard. And I don't know how far to go in terms of being vulnerable and sharing my personal stuff, or whether I should hold that back and just talk about my triumphs, my highs. And I say, you can't really tell a story without having some highs and lows. So there has to be contrast. Otherwise, it's not interesting. It's just you bragging if you're talking about all of the successes that you've had. Whereas obviously, what I say to them is that if you're sharing a low, try not to end on a low, because that just depresses people. You want to have a low that then transform to a high. But I really do think that's something that people are like, which of my stories should I share? And I wondered if you had any tips on that.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. It's not a story without a conflict and a conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? It has to have both. And I would say it can be really scary to be authentic and to share yourself on any sort of public forum. I think it really comes down to that authenticity. And this is going to sound like a cop out, but I absolutely just think it's true. It's when you feel it. If you are writing like up a post or you're writing up some go-to-market messaging and you feel yourself cringing or feeling uncomfortable, that's probably not it yet. Or maybe you're not to that next point. But when you have something that's real and something that's honest, that connects with you, you're going to feel it. You're going to know that it hits. And it does go back, because everyone, I know we're marketers and we need people to like our stuff. We need people to engage. But at the end of the day too, like at a certain point, you got to hit the post button, and you're going to get backlash. You're going to get critics no matter what you do. So when you are doing something that you believe in and that you think connects, please yourself is, I guess, where you're going, because you're never going to be able to please everybody. Yeah. Even with that go-to-market messaging, especially when you're talking about yourself.
Yeah. And I think that is a very important point. And I also think that in a way, we have a responsibility whenever we, as you said, we hit that button. We are basically out there making a difference to people's lives. If they're consuming our content, we're renting space in their brains effectively. Yeah. And I always like to think about what impact is this content going to have on them. And that, I think you made a really important point about connecting with your intuition, because I really believe that if we're putting stuff out there that's maybe a little bit negative or a little bit depressing, we might want to be raw and authentic and share this. But I've noticed in myself, because I've experimented with lots of different kinds of content, that it leaves me feeling, the wrong kind of content leaves me feeling quite depleted. Yeah. And so I think it's all about creating a balance between, as you said, being authentic and being real, and actually sharing, which is an act of generosity if we share of ourselves. And that's the thing that I love about it, together with that opportunity to inspire others, really. I think that's where it really comes together. Whereas if we're just sharing something that is, let's just say, a challenge or a difficulty or whatever, and we don't actually show how we really come through that, I found personally that doing that leaves me a bit depleted. And then I worry that it is not having the right impact really in terms of what I want to, the difference that I want to make on my audience and on the world in general. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, Rachel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, yes, it's depleting, and at times it's also pandering. And the last thing you want to do when you're communicating with people that you want to work with is talk down to them and alienate them or come off as emotionally manipulative. It's not it. It's not the goal.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, that I think a lot of people struggle with is, obviously, if you're sharing some of your lessons or sharing some of your wisdom and expertise and so on, nobody likes to be given unsolicited advice or to be talked down to, right? So that is a fine line to tread. And I do think a lot of people struggle with that, because it's easy to put yourself on a pedestal and to talk about what you do in terms of, oh, I'm just the expert in this and I know what you should do. And that also alienates people. I was actually thinking about that earlier. We have to make people feel as though we are genuinely empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are revealing our struggle, let's say, in some aspect, we have to do it in quite a sensitive and gentle way, don't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, it goes back. Every story has a conflict, and every story has a resolution. And I think if you are trying to talk about, there are ways to talk about how great you are without being a jerk. I think whether it's including like the challenge you overcame in a way that is real and that other people can relate to. Or I love to do fun things in marketing where we can play with elements of nostalgia or pop culture or pull other things in there. And it has this really great way of making your message stronger because you've pulled in other threads to help it resonate, but also like diluting like the braggadocious aspect of it.
Braggadocious, what a fantastic word. I haven't heard that word before. I'll be using that again. I love it. Braggadocious. That's a great
Braggadocious.
word.
That might not be. I think it's a real word. I don't know. I'll Google it after. I'll ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. Okay, Rachel, wrapping up, any big takeaway that you would like to leave people with today on the topic of storytelling?
I think what we were just talking about is most important. And I really appreciate you bringing up your clients' experiences because as creatives, it's hard to put yourself out there. And I have a team where I get things approved by multiple people and I'm still scared when something goes live. But at the end of the day, I know people say the internet's, but not as much anymore. I would say if you are too scared to get started or to start putting your name or your voice or your company out there, just start doing it. You'll figure it out. It's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay if a post doesn't get traction. And yeah, I think just be brave, get going, and you'll figure out that that's the most important piece of it is just pushing that publish button.
Yeah, I love that because really what's the worst that can happen is usually that you're not going to attract the trolls and haters, right? You're going to get ignored. That is generally the outcome. Good content, obviously, it attracts attention, but everybody has to start somewhere. And I always think that as long as you're putting stuff out there, whether it's actually getting the eyeballs on it or not, you're practicing, right? You're getting better every single day. But if you don't practice and if you don't put yourself out there and if you don't write posts or stories or blogs or do this kind of thing, you're never going to get any better. And you're just going to be stuck in that procrastinating perfectionist trap. Yeah. Okay, look, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you, Rachel, today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Such a fascinating topic, and thank you so much. So if our viewers and listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say I'm active on LinkedIn. So Rachel A. Hernandez, and I'm Nextnet Media and the Hoff. And then I would also say the Hoff, if you guys want to take a look at some of the content that we create, follow the Hoff on social media. We're active on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. We've got a lot of really great marketing content for marketers. We have a lot of fun with it. I would suggest following us there too.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to putting this episode out. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.